After being ignored for years, this dog ultimately developed an incredible quantity of hair that was difficult to handle in every way. Eventually, someone gave him a haircut that revealed who he really was. Tennessee is a state with an abundance of natural beauty, ranging from the Great Smoky Mountains to charming neighborhoods and streams tucked away in various locations. Regretfully, there was a barn with a far darker side in the same city. There was not a speck of light in this area, and there was not even enough room to walk. Lazarus, a single dog, sadly resided here with no chance of ever surviving. The 7-year-old Pyrenees dog had spent the last 6 years living in fear and discomfort in the barn. He had no one to play or converse with because the barn was just him. Unlike other fortunate dogs, he was not fond of cuddling and kisses. He was unaware of the comforting effects of a human friend's embrace. However, this dog made the most of his remaining time by hanging on to it. But this animal's situation was dire. There was not enough room for the animal to roam about in the barn where he resided since it was overflowing with excrement. He was unable to walk since he would frequently sit in one place. Would he ever figure out how to accomplish it, though? Lazarus frequently consumed his own feces since he was left on his own most of the time. You won't believe what happened to this animal after he was given real food at last. As you can see, Pyrenees dogs typically have double undercoats. Improper grooming causes matting, which in turn causes skin problems. This was, regrettably, Lazarus's awful end. His fur continued to grow throughout the years, and by the time he was 7 years old, it had already reached an incredible 35 pounds in weight. Whoa, no animal should have to live like that. All these years, poor Lazarus had no one to lean on, no one to love or care for him. Not a single person offered comfort or assurance that things would work out and that they would soon be all right. Beyond all of this, though, there was one thing that was even more crucial. Lazarus had to receive assistance as quickly as possible. Still, the animal was kept in captivity as the days turned into nights, not so much as a glimmer of optimism. So this animal had an owner, didn't it? Why would someone abandon their pet to such a terrible end? Yes, he did, and the owner's tale is equally depressing. Lawrence was the name of this individual. Lawrence was having the time of his life in his mid-30s. He enjoyed traveling as well and has witnessed some of the world's natural wonders. He too did a fantastic job. This man had a nice side as well. He was an animal lover, particularly with dogs. In fact, he discovered a stray puppy that had been struck and ran when he was 35 years old. Lawrence jumped out of his car, grabbed up the miserable puppy, and hurried her to the veterinarian as everyone else simply drove by. This man, who detested witnessing animals suffer, even started crying on the way there. Fortunately, he arrived to the veterinarian promptly, enabling the puppy to receive the critical care. This is just one of his many acts of kindness directed towards animals. So how could a person who had such a strong bond with dogs put his dog in such pain? You're going to be sad after learning what you are about to learn, so get ready. You see, Lawrence was quite fortunate to discover love while still a teenager. When Nicole turned 16, the two started dating. Lawrence was 18 at the time. Their bond strengthened as they developed, withstanding all obstacles and adversity. Lawrence had to struggle for his parents' love because they weren't supportive of the relationship. Nicole loved Lawrence even more despite the terrible abuse she received. Nicole was both Lawrence's superwoman and his haven. Years later, at the age of 23, Lawrence asked Nicole to marry him, and she said yes. Regretfully, that was the moment when they suffered a catastrophe. While traveling, a negligent motorist unexpectedly crashed into the two. Nicole was killed in this accident, and Lawrence held himself responsible, though in reality there was nothing he could have done. He wished he could have. Following this event, his life collapsed. He was fired shortly after because he was unable to focus at work. He eventually fell into sadness, and his mental state deteriorated significantly. But he bought Lazarus and kept him in the barn before his mental state deteriorated. He would sometimes give him food, but this man would not let Lazarus go. He was afraid that if the dog walked outside, he would also perish because he was no longer thinking clearly. He believed that putting his beloved animal in captivity was the only option. Lawrence's health deteriorated throughout the months, and he found himself thinking about how much more his poor, loving puppy would suffer. Thankfully, a miracle occurred when Fred, a single man, moved in next door. He saw that Lawrence occasionally visited Lazarus's barn and threw food and drink. Who or what was inside of it exactly? Fred pondered. Then, one day, he heard Lazarus softly barking as he was heading to the barn. He was shocked to learn that a dog had been around the entire time. He went to the door in a hurry to release Lazarus, but the guy was unable to enter because of the excrement-filled opening. I realized at this moment that I was helpless, and I immediately phoned Animal Rescue. The big fluffy dog team rescuers responded quickly to the call and raced to the barn, but none of them were ready for the devastating scene they were about to witness. Not even Lazarus realized that the long-awaited time had finally arrived. Two groomers who would shortly be doing their hardest to save Lazarus's life were part of the rescue crew. In an attempt to save the adorable puppy, the crew had to use shovels to clear the feces that were obstructing the entry to the barn. At this point, Lazarus was almost free. After shoveling for a few minutes, the door finally flew open, letting light into the barn for the first time in 6 years. As the rescuers dashed in, they saw Lazarus in person. The shovel I was carrying slipped off my hands as soon as we spotted him. That is not how I have ever seen a dog look. His eyes were still so bright, and even with his matted hair, I could see hope in them. It seemed like he had been anticipating this day, said one of the rescuers. Upon approaching the dog, they saw he was already experiencing health issues and was unable to move. My initial concern was whether he would ever recover from everything that had happened to him and find the courage and fortitude to walk again, said another savior. Now that they had saved the day, the group got to work. Lazarus accompanied them to the animal shelter, where they began to trim off all of those unclean hairs. You won't believe this dog's final appearance following his metamorphosis. The dog, who was first uneasy and afraid of the rescuers, needed hours to be groomed. But when they had completely shaved the fur off his neck, he became more receptive to his rescuers. He was aware of their good intentions and their desire to assist. After cutting off the final hair, the group gave Lazarus a lengthy, warm bath. There wasn't a single dry eye at the animal center that evening when the hair eventually dried off. Lazarus was an entirely different person. This wonderful, attractive, and adorable youngster was hiding behind that dejected, matted dog. Lazarus was so well groomed that he was pictured by everyone, who proudly displayed him. There were, however, other drawbacks. Lazarus, for example, unable to acclimate to the outer world in a timely manner. Lazarus is unable to function as a dog. The animal rescue team's founder, Gene Morrison, remarked, "He doesn't exactly behave like a dog." Naturally, the fluffy creature was treated with patience by everybody, and he quickly discovered more. He was quite mindful and cautious as he had his first substantial meal. He nibbled on a cooked steak. He was quite bashful. We were quite saddened by this, since dogs shouldn't have to be thankful for food. Fortunately, the dog's ordeal is finally done. Later, Lazarus was transferred to Virginia, where he resided with his foster mother, Charsha Lindsay, a volunteer for the non-profit Big Fluffy Dog Rescue. The kind woman gave Lazarus the strength he needed to recover. Lazarus had to stop and consider his next move at first, but these days he plays, walks, and runs like any other content dog, enjoying life to the fullest. Nobody would have guessed he had such a difficult childhood. I'm overjoyed for this puppy.